13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
All right, Bill. Well, I would like to just at least jump into a quick off the cuff intro here while we just had the guest off, and we can always do an addendum on the end because we'll be coming in again. Sweet. Dude, this was awesome. I'm sorry I took so much of the question and show, and I felt like I sidelined the guest too much, but it was such a refreshing conversation. It was very aligned with everything that we're doing in his way of thinking. So, man, I felt like I was having a separate conversation that was inspired and driven by the questions. It was beautiful in a way. I hope it still seems that way when I re-listen to it.
Yeah, I think I was having a great time. I didn't think you were, overstepping boundaries or whatever. But yeah, Juan, I mean, the whole conversation, it's just everything about this is great.
Oh yeah,
Juan's a great dude. He's got a great project going on that just pretty much goes hand in hand with what we're trying to do at 13 Questions.
Yep, and I think it's Juan
Sepulveda.
Yeah. Dude, this was another one of those great guests that you found through your Masonic circles and your interests. And you know what it's showing me? I've always been interested in the Masons. Obviously, we talked about it with my grandfather being a Mason, and I've known a lot. I've performed in theaters with drama and been in the back rooms, and I've always had this just interesting, it's been a fascination of mine, but I'm becoming more and more interested with the people that are drawn into Masonry. It's a different caliber, isn't the right word. It's a person who generally thinks in a way I'm not used to, and I find it incredibly refreshing because when you think of traditional Masons, it's older, it's reclusive, and to me, the surprising thing is the above level modern thinking, or I should say not being tied to old ways of thinking, that surprises me the most about Masonry. I'm sure it doesn't surprise you being in it, because once you learn about it, it's a brotherhood.
Yeah, I can see where the old ways of, that disconnect there, because it is such an old fraternity. It's the world's largest and oldest fraternity.
Well, and from the outside, I've had the luxury of being in the back rooms and meeting the people and having family members. But if you have none of that and it's just ancillary looking in, generally older white dudes doing rituals behind doors, looking at books and symbols, it's just, you don't think of it in the same way. And, it is secretive, right? So until modern times, when I could start looking up online what the Masons, actually, I don't want to say believe, but you know what I mean? The core of what it is, if I was there, here's an idea of the type. I had no understanding of the metaphysical aspect, the mathematical aspect, the cyclical aspect, the cataclysmic aspect. I didn't understand those aspects of the information. And maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but once I kind of became exposed to that, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that these guests would be so incredibly open-minded.
Yeah, it's been being a part of that fraternity has been a really positive influence on my life. That's how, we mentioned this before, that's how Juan and I got in contact. We were working on another separate project about a year ago from now, actually. And so that I've just started following. Well, I knew about him a little bit before from the Masonic Roundtable podcast, and of course his Winding Stairs. But yeah, this is when we were talking before the show, trying to not purposely steer the conversation away from Masonry, but kind of not putting too much emphasis on it, because I think both projects, what they're doing is great for the craft, but I think that what the more important thing to emphasize is the brotherhood of men in general, whether you're part of the craft or not. So and yeah, I'm really super excited to see what can grow out of 13 Questions and the Gentleman's Brotherhood working together down the road, into the future.
Well, think about every great corporation or group of individuals who has done something or changed things in the world. What did they have? They had core ideas and interaction between each other, right? From all of that, everything else came. There was action involved, but at the core, it was people communicating. And, I don't know what is in store, what our potential is, where we could grow, where we will go, but I do know that we have the proper environment. We've got the soil, we've got the seeds, and, these questions, to me, I think the garden is ripe to grow. Are we growing tomatoes, eggplants? Is it going to be sunflowers? Who knows? But I'm looking forward to see.
Yeah, and you touched on something that's important there when communicating, and a way to do that. What we try to facilitate is through the Discord chat, and that's free, and so is the show's value for value too, which is so free. But yeah, communicating, like, it's so much easier to make these types of things that we talk about actionable and tangible in your own life when you have other people to discuss the episodes with, or just to ask anything, you're just that open line of communication. Like, things start happening when people talk to each other. It doesn't really matter how the conversation gets started. It'll grow organically, like, and naturally, and something that you don't see coming will be brought into your life. Like, I
Right.
don't know how many times I have to I don't know, talking about this story and me and my experiences with Discord and being brought into this project, and like how much I don't know, I just want to say magic that has been brought into my life just by talking to people through this Discord app. So I can't encourage our listeners enough to go, and the link, you can find the link on our website, 13questionspodcast.com. If you go into the podcast episodes tab,
Yep.
there'll be a link above the player. You can click that and that'll take you right into the chat.
And we encourage you, if you know anybody that you want to ask the questions to also send us their name to 13questionspodcast.com. Or if you would like to do the questions on your own, in person, to me, is always optimal. There's a fidelity in there, a nuance, we've mentioned it before, there's blinking and subcontext and in things that you're probably emitting that we don't even know, that aren't even visual, when you're in the room with a person. That's palpable, and you feel it in the audio. So if you happen to be out there and there's somebody that you know that you want to hear, hit me up, and we'll get you hooked up in the best way with your technical means and abilities.
Yeah, we're a resource for you guys, so definitely reach out. We're not afraid to offer help or advice or whatever we think. So don't be afraid. Yeah, and you'll find the bonus feed in the Discord too. Mention that real quick. And then the open source aspect we kind of touched on a little bit in the interview. Like, and we also touched about leaving a legacy, and this is participating in this project. If you're listening to this and you feel like you need to do something meaningful or something tangible, and like you can sit back and like see the results of it, like doing your own 13 questions with somebody that you think is important in your life is a way to do that. Like, before I was even brought in to help with the show, like, I took these questions and I asked them to my dad, and I didn't record them at the time. I was just curious because he's my dad and I wanted to know his views. But that, like, even just doing that without the recording gave me that was beneficial. But as a listener and to contribute to the show, Like that's just something that is easy. It seems, not that difficult to do, and we're here to help you.
Well,
So why not go out and do
we
it?
talked to Juan about this tonight about autobiographies. He reads a lot of autobiographies and the knowledge that you can find on a person. And what's great about these questions is, most people aren't going to have the capability or ability to write a full, biography on their father. But these questions, they give you a look into thinking, modalities, information sets, the things that they've learned from, the information they've been given. And I think that's a really beautiful thing that you can have.
Yeah, and plus it's just cool to be a part of. Like I think this project is pretty cool. And to be able to contribute to it in as much as I've been able to up until this point has really been, life altering for me. And I don't say that lightly. So I think that, anybody that wants to contribute will also find the same value out of it that I'm getting.
Yep, absolutely. Help us be able to do more.
And yeah, in another way, I mean, if you don't want to do the recording yourself, you can always choose to support us monetarily. We are value for value.
Send us the information. Yeah, we're looking to do that. We have hosting costs. We need guests for the show. Bill does a lot of hunting, but eventually he's going to run out of ideas. Probably not. There's a lot of people in the world, but we certainly want different angles, different facets, people that wouldn't be in our thinking of or even wanting to pull because we don't know who they are. So. Yeah, we're really interested in getting your help from that. Plus, we kind of operate in a vacuum. We're in the Discord. Tell us the things you like that you don't like. This thing is not static. And yeah, man, we're here as part of the community. So it's good to be here with everyone. And share with your friends, right? If you find something valuable in a podcast, give them a timestamp, send it to them, and I don't want to have the hubris or the ego to say that we're making the world a better place. But I know that there's been information in these podcasts that has resonated with me and stuck with me. And if somebody had just given that to me as a gift, right? Not many, I'll lose a keychain and never remember I had it, but this is something I can keep forever. Try to give that to somebody.
Yeah, sharing the show is. I guess we should probably do more emphasis on that aspect because I'm horrible at social media. So like as far as posting it to YouTube, I
Yeah.
don't even know if we do post stuff to YouTube or not. This is how I should probably know this, but yeah, sharing the show. That's the more people I think that can hear these conversations, the better we can make the world together. And
Look at that, going all John Lennon on us.
yeah, I hope that doesn't sound too gushy or whatever.
No, it's all good. I'll just try not to be your Yoko.
Yeah. So, yeah, gratitude segment. I guess we should, I don't know, maybe go into that without the jingle. I keep thinking or talking about it, and we're getting, I don't know, just getting kind of far.
You've hexed yourself into it.
Yeah, I know.
If you hadn't spoke it, it would already be here.
Right. Maybe if we get it before this comes out, we can like slap it in the middle of the audio file. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, gratitude. What am I grateful for today? Well, when we're recording this on Halloween, so I guess I don't know, I think it's kind of neat that there's a full moon on the Halloween. It's the second full moon of October, which is fairly unusual for any month to have two full moons, actually. So yeah, if we're just going to talk about gratitude, I guess it's appropriate to be grateful for the moon. I've been kind of paying more attention to the ebbs and flows of energy and just the different ways people interact out in public when compared to like the waxing or waning phases of the moon. People tend to act a little bit weirder when the moon is full. So just being mindful of those changes in my environment and in the actions of other people and taking note is interesting. And I think there's something more to it, more to be gleaned. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I don't know. It's definitely something I'm exploring and kind of experimenting with. So yeah, I guess I'm grateful that there's 2 full moons this month.
The moon
because
is so fascinating from
yeah,
the perspective of how it influences nature, how the statistical aberrations in human behavior. We talked about on this episode the impact that seeing the moon had on his son versus, talking about the discovery of water on the moon in the real world, the seeing it. And if you go through lore, there's so many lores about the moon and wolves and silver, and this becomes some very, very interesting things to look at. And the moon is such a strange thing. It stays in this orbit, always facing us, one side away. It rings like a bell. It's lighter than it should be. It is a mystery wrapped in an enigma, smothered in secret sauce. And it is so close with a face on it staring at us. It is, whether on some sort of metaphysical or archetypal level, whether there is something truly physically remarkable about the moon, if only what it does in our minds, man, the moon, you want to talk about an influence on humanity, culture, and the way the world is, you could put it up in there in like the top 5, even if it's just from seeing it, it's in so many things.
yeah. Speaking of seeing it, if you go to the Discord chat, we have a user in there, 357D. He took some pictures of the moon last night, and they're really, really high quality. And you can kind of see this. I don't know. This fun fact. There's like this. If you go to the Discord and you look at the moon, there's a white crater in the bottom right hand corner, and you can kind of see like lines spidering out from it. Well, that thing will actually rotate like a clock. Right now, if you look at the picture in the Discord, it's kind of at the 4 o'clock position or 5 o'clock position. And over time, I don't know if it goes counterclockwise or clockwise, but like that'll change. Like, so this time it's at the bottom face of the clock, and next time you look at it, or a few days from now, it'll be at the top. So
Wow.
like, something I didn't know is that the moon actually like it doesn't, the same side is still facing us, but it still spins. So I just thought that was neat to share.
Yeah, I hadn't realized.
Yeah, so check out the pictures in the Discord.
Well, Bill, that was a great interview. We should also mention that in this first segment here, we have plans on putting an addendum on this. So we'll just be going into this being a shorter version of the 13 questions. When you listen, we are aligned on so many things. Our paths are definitely going to be crossing. So at some point, we will get back to these questions in the future, I'm sure of it. But for right now, we have a. I mentioned it before. I thought I took it too far and talked too much. So this is a very in-depth 13 questions. We certainly didn't skim the surface, but we had to let Juan attend to some family matters. So yeah, you get the cream of the crop.
Yeah. So extra emphasis on joining the Discord for this intro, I guess, since we don't have the bonus content to pull you in to the chat. So Discord, check it out, get in there.
That's right. Say hello, tell your friends about us, and tell us what you think. All right, Bill, ready for the show?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's roll on in.
Welcome back, everybody. This episode, we have Juan Sepulveda. Juan, thank you for taking the time out to come sit down with us and have a conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm excited to to get to speak with you and answer some of your awesome questions.
And Juan's got another a project of his own called the Gentleman's Brotherhood that I think that ties really well into what we're trying to do here at 13 Questions. So, did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. In 2015, I started a project called the Gentleman's Brotherhood, and the focus of it was to help men in their personal journey of development as men. I had recently come across some statistics that mentioned that about 40% of young men in the United States grew up in a household without a male role model. That meant that they didn't have a father figure in the house, not even a grandfather in the house to perhaps guide them through the ropes of what it meant to be a man and pass along that knowledge. So if you that to me was shocking because I thought, wow, 4 out of every 10 kids grows up without a manly or masculine figure in the household. Um, what happens to the other six? Can we assume that the other six have a good male role model in their house? Or is it safe to assume that not 100% of those men are worthy of emulation for these young kids? So if we're optimistic and we say that of those six, uh, four are great dads, we're talking about that only 40% of children in this country grow up with someone worth emulating in their household. And I thought, I have kids of my own, and I would like to document some of this knowledge that I've gleaned from my father, from my uncles, from business partners, and all of that. Can I put this in a format that men can feel comfortable getting to ask those questions? Is this okay for a man to do, or am I doing things right? Am I moving in the right direction? And although I love that there are so many strong women out there that are actually taking that burden on of raising kids without a man in the family, that act of juggling work and education and the family can be so burdensome. And I wanted to offer an alternative here of how to help these young men figure out what does it mean to be a gentleman in the 21st century.
That's amazing. See, when I heard that you had this project, I was really interested in the interview because to me, it was like, it almost seemed like we're not that we're on the same team, right? But we're playing the same sport. And so I found it really cool because, I love the things you're talking about. It's sad because if you're not given that knowledge, if it's not shared, you learn through mistake and through regret and through damage, and it's unavoidable. But if you have somebody to guide you, women are amazing, but just in the way that a father, a single father can't attend to all the same understandings and needs, you can, it's like, I can say I understand it, I can see it, but I can't. It's a side of the coin I can't see. And it's great to see that acknowledged in a culture where, for whatever reasons, these want to get looked over for ideological reasons instead of like um, human truths.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And some of these people that don't have a model to follow, they find easy to follow whatever is available. Think about how many children grow up and the only male figures that they see that they may aspire to emulate are either the people who are uh, dealing drugs in their neighborhood, because those are the ones that are driving the nice cars, or those are the popular ones. Those are the ones that they see have the latest and greatest things, or they follow musicians. Although musicians play a great component in our society by lifting our spirit with their music or triggering introspection with their lyrics, they're as flawed as we are. And can you follow? Can you assume that just because they're great at their talent, that they're great at life, and that they're worth emulating in the way that they deal with their business, with their partners, and their relationships. And you see so much of it out there, this adoration for celebrities. Celebrities are great at doing their craft. It doesn't mean that they're good people. So it's important, I think, for us to break from that easy flow of, oh, this is what I have access to, this is what I think happens. No, let's look at data. Let's look at what studies tell you about uh, discrimination, about bias, about chauvinism. Is there data about traits that are exclusive, or character traits that are more predominant in one gender versus another? And it's a conversation worth having. If you have all the information in front of you, you can then make an informed decision and really make an impact in your surrounding.
Yes, information. That's key. It's something I've been kind of thinking about and bringing up during the shows recently with Adam, is just broadening that pool of information from which we can draw to make, to try to better ourselves. So I love the fact that both of these projects are, in a sense, memorializing this wisdom in kind of a timeless medium that is podcasting, where for, as long as we'll have the internet around. I think that's awesome. And I love that we're able to connect here and have this conversation. So thank you
Absolutely.
again for taking your time out to spend with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
All right. So you want to jump into the questions now? Are we ready?
Sure.
All right. Question number 1. What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it at all today?
My favorite piece of advice is one that kept on resurfacing throughout my life. And it was such a part of my life that I can't tell whether it was my mother or my father who made it prominent in the family, but they both share the opinion. And it was, de los cobardes no se ha escrito nada, or nothing's been written of cowards.
Mm.
And in a sense, saying, just don't be afraid. If there is something that you think it's worth pursuing, nothing's been written about cowards. Arm yourself with courage and go for it. And that to me was very liberating, because it gave me that freedom to make decisions that otherwise would have been scary. And it doesn't make decisions not scary. It just gives you that confidence that despite how scary they may be, your courage pushes you through and you're able to
Well, that's great, because that's a
done.
view that lets you go, like, look, this is how it works. I know this. Your experience, everything you see in the world, all the stories that are told, the history. That's a beautiful way. If you're given that as a young child, that's huge, because now, why am I courageous? Because that's how you get ahead. That's how you do it. It's one of those fundamental rules of the universe.
Right. It's that fear of the unknown. And I try to tell this to my kids. I say, I recently read it was like it was a revelation of how Elon Musk used to be afraid of the dark until he realized that what darkness was. And he said, I remember distinctly the moment where I used to be afraid of the dark, and I realized the dark is just a lack of photons bouncing against the materials in a room. Am I really afraid of the absence of photons? And when he understood, well, it's just the unknown that I was afraid of, but now I understand it, and now he becomes fearless to the dark. And if we take that same approach to anything, rejection, for example, for us men, rejection is a topic that is of great import. Young men right now are growing in a very tumultuous environment. When you look at the whole Me Too movement, which I believe was a great thing for our society, for there to be a moment where females are empowered to say, wait a second, pump the brakes here, right? But how should our children navigate this? I grew up in Puerto Rico, and my uncles and my dad, they would instill in me don't be afraid. Just go talk to a girl and ask her if she wants to go to the movies. If she doesn't, then you didn't go to the movies. Like there's that rejection is no reflection on who you are. You know who you are, right? So, but what happens today? Like, how are children supposed to, get to have little girlfriends in in school? How are young teenagers? How do they approach rejection? These are conversations that I don't hear people having, and it's important for them to be stripped out of that fear of rejection, because rejection is nothing else than an affirmation that our interests are not in line. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to align with everybody's views or desires. But if you don't understand that, perhaps you take it as a reflection upon who you are. Oh, am I ugly? Like, do I not smell right? Or am I not good enough? And it shouldn't be taken like that.
No, it shouldn't. Unfortunately, we've got this heavy overlay of the social media that really, that's the game. It's, who looks better, who has better, who gets more likes. So it's a thing our society's never faced before. It's really, it's a needed thing, because as we're learning, right? There's no solidified answers. This thing is growing on us as we're trying to figure out how it's affecting us as human beings. So it's beautiful here because there's not nobody doing this, but it's certainly not a focus of our culture.
Yeah, I haven't heard, any conversations around, how young people can connect today, especially, with pandemic and a lockdown that makes it so much harder. I think it makes social media more of a crutch than what's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I don't know, it can be double edged, because I think being rejected on social media is probably, I don't know, it can be easier and harder at the same time than in person. I don't know. If you think of it like sales, like you're going to get more no's than yeses, and it's easier. I don't know. It's an interesting concept I've never thought about. So I don't have any answers for that. But yeah, I think that just being afraid, and especially of rejection, is something that is pretty prevalent in the male psyche, especially when looking for a mate. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Just the more times you do it, the more comfortable you get. Just like anything else, I guess. So.
And there's something there when you say, well, I don't know, I don't have the answers, right? That is so important. Like right now, for example, we could take the posture of, oh, I'm representing 13 questions, or I'm representing the Gentleman's Brotherhood. I need to have an answer. And then people take a posture just because of the expectation from the outside. Well, I should be the one that gives you the answer. Like, no, we don't have all the answers. And recognizing that is like, I really don't know how to deal with that. That's that catalyst that takes you now to go and find, okay, how do we do this? And guys, it's okay. I don't have all the answers, but I promise you that if there's an answer you need, right, I'm going to go and look for it. And this happens so much in conversations. People, to not appear foolish or not appear like they don't know something, they'll completely avoid at all cost saying, oh, you know what? That's interesting. I don't know how that works, but I'll find out. No, people don't do that. People, well, I'm generalizing, but most people would say, no, but that must be because of this, or this is how that is, and they lean on whatever preconception they have of it, however flawed it may be. So I find these things to be super helpful. We have these conversations. You spark that question. It's like, you know what? I'd never considered that. I'll have to get back to you. There's so much power in
I
that.
never even thought about that, because these questions are ones that you just can't come up with an on-the-fly answer. There's just, for me, even when we're sitting here and I hear the questions reread, like it's like I have to chew through it again, and like it's no cut and dry. That's a great angle, man.
It helps me. It helps me not look foolish when I look back at all the footage.
Well, I love how people think there's answers. It's like, look, we live in a world that functions in a certain way. We're just telling stories. We're just writing down ways we think this works. There really is no answer. It is. Yep. How do you interface with it? What works best for you, and what's worked well in the past? It doesn't mean that, oh, money, we can't get rid of it. I don't know if there's another answer for money. I don't know if money's the end all, but I knew that there was a time before it. And I know that, I don't know, you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's we need to have these conversations. I'm glad that we're having these on record, and we get to share these with the people that follow us, because these are conversations that will stimulate new thoughts and new approaches and new points of views. But these are the kinds of conversations that need to happen with our friends. So many times I've been in a position where I get access to a novel group of people, right? I try to capitalize on that new access as best as I can. I'm not going to be talking about the weather. I'm not going to be talking about the route you took to get here. I could not care any less. Tell me about you. Oh, that's an interesting title. How did you earn that title? Or that's an awesome sounding job. What do you do there? And being inquisitive and having those, capitalizing on those opportunities is crucial. Like, these are the kinds of conversations I thrive upon.
I love it. Yeah, the angle that you brought up of not of being okay not knowing something, I think is important too, because I think a lot of times people will feel like they will look stupid or uncool if they're uninformed, when in reality, like, if you don't know something, just say you don't know. It's so much easier than to try to pretend that you know everything about everything.
That's true.
Yeah, I think that's important too. But yeah, so I love it. Question number 2. What was the most important lesson you learned from your parents?
Of course, there are many. There are many lessons, but upon reflecting on this, was tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. And all of these are axioms or Spanish proverbs, right? I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I moved to the States when I was 20 years old. So I have a lot of Spanish uh, proverbs that
I've never
made me
heard
who
that
I
one
am.
before. That's a really good one.
Oh yeah. Tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. It, for me, it has helped me filter out the people that I allow in my inner circle. It makes me more protective of the people that get to be close to me. And not because I'm important or not because of any reason. It's because I am the only thing I have, right? I am my primary asset, per se. And I know that I need to protect it, right? I need to be able to decide, this is how I spend my time. These are the people I spend my time with. This is what I spend my time doing. So, do I want to be around people that are going to bring me down, are going to impact me negatively, that are going to have a detrimental effect on my business and my focus and my relationships? So, tell me who you're with, and I tell you who you are.
Yeah,
That's
that's
beautiful.
awesome. I think that you can also apply that to not just who you're physically with, but who you
Mhm.
surround you with digitally too. Like, what
Mm,
podcasts do you listen to? What you channels on YouTube do you follow, etc.
Well,
I
even the
like that.
entertainment that you ingest. I was a huge Walking Dead fan for 3 seasons until I realized that it was literally disrupting just my behavior, my emotions. I was getting angry and wanting to kill things, and I'm like, this is not cool. And I mean, it caused me to shift out of watching horror.
Oh, look at that.
So yeah, it's when you're cognizant of the outside influencing your inside. Yeah, it's a very powerful bit of knowledge to discover.
Yeah. I used to look at it I had an analogy that I carried in my mind about your mind being a dwelling, and this dwelling has rooms, and the you only have a certain amount of people that can live in this dwelling. Imagine it as an apartment complex. If the space is rented out to people that are good with others, people that are kind and empathetic, generous, all those things, then the overall neighborhood basically tends to lean that way. But if if the tenants in that space are paranoid and aggressive and angry and condescending, then yeah, that's what your neighborhood is like.
Yeah, well,
So
entertainment's
I've
an
always looked
escape,
at it like
right? So
that.
what are we escaping into? We're
Mhm.
escaping into this despair, which is, kind of not at least where I want to be. So love it,
Yeah,
dude.
couldn't agree more. Question number 3. What book has been most influential on your life and why?
For me, it was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. That book came to me at a moment where I needed it the most. I had recently lost my mother to cancer. I had become injured, um, and I couldn't do a lot of the things that I really enjoy doing. And I had some problems with my arms. I had a form of tendonitis that was impeding. I couldn't even hold a book for a reading session without my arms really hurting, and it really made me reconsider my choices. The job that I had at the time was a corporate job that required a ton of time, me typing and working with a computer. And here I wasn't doing what I really loved, which was art. I'm a professional artist by trade, and that that was the moment that I saw the prospect of not being able to paint anymore. And that I had given my healthy years to careers that were not contributing to me reaching my dream of becoming a professional artist. And that book by Paulo Coelho, it's a hero's journey of sort, but his journey was so informative to me. It was so eye-opening to me that it helped me. It was that catalyst by which I could now make a decision to leave the corporate world and go after that dream of becoming an artist. My mother was an artist as well. And I say that she died with too many blank canvases on her. She was relatively young and vibrant, and just she got ill and she was gone. And that was hard. That was like, oh wow, I don't want to get to the end of my life and find out that I've been pursuing this elusive success that people are, have their mindset on, when my treasure has been here all along. I have my words and I have my colors, and I can actually make a difference with what I have right now. And of course, I don't want to ruin the plot of the book. If you haven't read it, I recommend that you go get it. It is definitely worth reading. But The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho just shook me to the core and set me in the path that got me here.
That's awesome. Was your corporate life like the constant, sitting in one position, was that affecting you and making it worse?
I, to an extent, we had Herman Miller chairs. We had ergonomically adjusted keyboards and monitors. So the ergonomics weren't that much of a problem. It was more the repetitive
Yeah.
uh, task. And yeah, that was to a great extent that was part of it.
Yeah, because I think
And
about these things about, the things it's not, you weren't meant to do. It's like when there's something that's not your destiny, if you will, the thing that you're not drawn to, it seems that, something like that, whether it's from the mind, it's kind of like, hey man, like we got to get out of here. Like, you can't keep going along with this. It's like, this was not meant for you. You got to be moving around more. You were meant to be an artist. Artists can't do the same thing over and over again. Like, it's kind of like a physical manifestation of the mental world.
Mm-hmm. Have you read the book?
No. There's several people that have mentioned it. So it's on my reading list for sure, especially after tonight.
You sounded like you have read it there, because there's a quote that I keep around of the book. It says, when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you achieve it. And that's exactly what happened to me. Here, the circumstances around me were saying, hey, this is not it. This is not it. Move, change, pivot. Now focus on your new
Isn't that
adventure.
great? Yeah, I love that angle, because people think about like The Secret as in like, it's what you need to think is being good. No, the world can do the opposite. It can
Oh, yeah.
it can push you through ways that you might not like towards what you want. So you can be looking at something. It's that classic, look at the good in every situation.
Mhm.
Well, hey man, stop going towards that door. It just closed for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, man. It's great perspective.
Yeah,
That's
we've
right.
had that book come up as for several answers, for the guests recently. So if
Look
you're
at
still into this and you haven't picked up the book, go and do it, because I've read it too. I've read a PDF
All right,
online.
Bill,
It doesn't take
you
that
got the
long to
rest of
read.
this, right? I'll see you guys later.
Yeah.
that. You'll be back in an hour. It's not that long of a book.
It's really not. Okay. Question 4. What daily habits or rituals do you have?
One of the habits that I have that I'm proud of, and I'll have to be forthcoming that at the moment I am slacking a little bit in it, but we're working to pick it back up, is reading at a specific time with the family. We made it a rule that we want to follow, is that of course we want to model the behaviors that we want our children to have as part of the fabric of their behavior, and reading is one of them. And we said that at 8:30 we're going to sit down together as a family. Everybody has a book, and all digital life ends at 8:30 in the house, and we sit down and read. And some of the earlier memories I have of seeing a couple that I wanted to emulate um, was a relative of mine, him and his wife. I went over to their house for like a slumber party. So all the kids, they're all playing and everything. And I looked to the side, and the mom and the dad were sitting at the couch together, each holding a book, quietly there, they're just being there, reading. And I remember that picture being so beautiful to me. I thought, wow, I love that. How come we don't do that? Granted, my family did other stuff that they didn't, which was very influential to my life. So I'm not saying their life was better than mine, but for me, having that vision of, oh wow, that's a possibility for a couple that sits together and reads together. Not at the time they didn't have cell phones, but they could have been doing anything.
Well,
And they
that's
were
the weird switch, right? Reading has changed its intention. It used to be for improvement and gaining of knowledge and new perspectives and views, or living in a different world. Now it's all advertising, likes, clicks. It's
Mhm.
dynamic and manipulated. And, as we're my book in 1984 that I got in high school, good luck changing it. You got to break into my house. I'm going to notice it looks different, right? But the PDF version I have from Amazon, who knows?
Yeah. There's something about the physical book that, I mean, I have a Kindle and I love it, but there's something about me sitting with a book and reading. And my habits of reading have changed. That habit that I just mentioned is just that collective habit with the family, because I want to instill that in them. But my personal way of reading looks very different than what a lot of people's reading habits looks like.
Yeah, I could do better at setting aside reading time too, but I do try to make it a point to get a little bit in each day. But yeah, I just think that it's really important now, maybe more so than the times before, to pursue interests or pursue topics or reading that that you want to learn about, because uh, with I don't know, I'm just seeing the censorship being ratcheted up pretty much
Hmm.
everywhere you look. So
Mhm.
if you if you want to know the truth about something, you can't really rely on what you hear, or what
Well,
other information is out there besides going and getting a book that was written and physically put on paper years ago when information wasn't so malleable.
what's
Hmm.
great now too is you also have other aspects. There's so many people out there through certain reasons can't read or have trouble reading or need different forms of input. And it's great because now, at least in the simple podcasting realm, so many of these books that have been, I forget what they call it, but when the patent or whatever, it's run out. It's you can it's public information, if you will.
Public domain.
Public domain, yeah. So, like the Grimerica show has done this in the Black Budget. They take some really old, important works that most people haven't heard, and they put them into a high quality audio format for people out there. And it's beautiful to see this because we're living in a world where even if it seems restrictive, there's still an expansion and encompassing of more things and people that I think it's kind of how the system's built. As bad as it gets, there's always and you can never get rid of all the weeds.
Yeah.
There's always that life that's always looking to spring up.
Yeah. Now think about this. Let's say, yeah, this is a super crazy and random thought, but imagine that books, writing and publishing new books was banned all over the world. Wouldn't matter. It would not matter. Do you know how many millions and millions of books are already in existence? Anything right now that you want to achieve in your life, you could probably achieve it with any of the books that are already published. And I recently saw an old footage of Carl Sagan, which is a hero of mine, and he was showing a particular library somewhere, and he said, "Look at this collection of books." And he said, "If I were to read a book a week in my lifetime, I would be able to read from here to here." And it's just one wall of books. And he is in the second floor of this gigantic collection of books. That puts things in perspective. There's a book you're reading and it's really doing nothing for you. Put that sucker aside. Get a book that's worth your time. Because even if you were to read a book a week, you're not going to get through all the books. So the amount of time you can spend reading, or the number of tomes you can get through, it's very limited. So pick wisely. And you don't need new books. There are tons and tons of books that you can get. We're super fortunate about that, but we
Mhm.
squander our opportunity to read them because we're busy, you know,
Oh,
arguing with people
it's
on
the
TikTok,
greatest bit of technology we've ever had. I was talking to a
right?
coworker about this, that my ability to do things outside of my head, whether it even be simple math, right? It's by being able to put it on a paper. I'm making a little hard drive. I'm making this ledger. It's literally it's this machine that
Mhm.
is I have to interface with, and we've all got that. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of a cool way to think of books as being really important when you have access to them. So there was a time when, man, I mean, if you wanted a book, it had to be hand transcribed.
Mhm. Imagine. That- yeah, we're fortunate. I say it all the time. We have access to a wealth of information, and we just squander our time just following what some few people want us to do.
Yeah, the evolution of information over just the recent past years is really something that's unprecedented. Like before, like we've never seen this in human history, at least in our collective consciousness that we can remember right now. So
Mhm.
yeah, uh, books books are important.
Books for the win.
Yep. All right, question 5. If I were to ask your best friend what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most, and why?
My best friend would tell you my best friend would tell you follow through and consistency. I'm a dreamer. I consider myself to be a doer. I I don't just dream, I make things happen. I'm very proud of that. But there are things that I haven't finished, that I've started, that have great potential. And every now and then I have someone like my best friend remind me, "Hey, how are you doing on this?" And it kind of renews my focus. If I leave it to just my head, it it could go by without me finishing the thing. So that's tough to hear. You have to finish what you start, right? Not that book. If the book is stupid, put it down. You have to finish what you start. If it's a worthy project, if it's a good initiative, don't get distracted and put together the procedures or the steps, the method that's going to help you accomplish that. So, before we started recording, we were talking about putting together a team. That's one of the things that that I'm working to improve. I need to get more people around me that can help build that foundation to support that consistency and that follow through that he would tell you I need.
Yeah, you need a mastermind group. You've got to have that core group of people that that are all sharing together. There's so much more power with a group. You can't see everything, and everybody's got skills you can use. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful when people recognize that it wasn't Michael Jordan. It was Michael Jordan's ability to get his teammates to follow the same thing he wanted.
Yeah. But that's not what's visible.
Right.
That's why these discussions are important. That's not what's visible.
Yeah,
People
exactly.
see,
Exactly.
yeah, a recent example, Henry Ford. Everybody knows who Henry Ford is. And with all his flaws and all his shortcomings, he left the mark in civilization. Well, his lady was instrumental in that success. And you don't know her name, right? I don't know her name. I can't. I read the I read the book, but I can't remember. But this
Is it
lady was
Henrietta and Henry Ford? No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. For some reason it sounded right.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's the truth. It's like there's so many people out there that they are the ones that shine. Thomas Edison was one. He had a team. He had an incredibly talented team. He had an incredibly talented network of people that facilitated his vision. But the name we remember is that. That's why reading these biographies, like that's one of the things that I enjoy. Reading biographies shows you, oh, no, you were wrong about this person. Look, this person had these flaws. This person had these crutches. This person had these advantages.
Yes.
How can you keep your eye on all that and then move forward with your decisions?
Everybody focuses on the winner. Nobody focuses on all the losses. In the locker room, the crying, just the bottom of the barrel. They see the win. I'm more interested in how somebody handles and moves through the ladder.
Yeah. No, that's fuel for me.
And speaking about having a team, working in a team environment or, having support around you, I think that with projects, like you can apply that to projects like this or Gentleman's Brotherhood. Like we wouldn't be anywhere if it weren't from interactions from the listeners or, from guests like what we're doing right now. So yeah, I think having that team is important. So, I mean, if there's anything that, Adam and I could do to help Gentleman's Brotherhood or, vice versa, like we've talked about collaborating before with another past guest. So yeah, I mean, if there's something that, we can help each other out with, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Because in the past, what we've talked about doing and when we set up the original forums on the website, it was for that. We have a TJ Walker gave some communication courses. We were in talks with Dr. Hart about coming on and just offering services. I know Graham's going into getting more counseling training for addiction, so he can really counsel people in not an official capacity, but the right way. He's got all the tools in his toolbox he needs to actually help people. So, the vision of this thing is to just be a group of people helping people and kind of facilitating the network. I mean, that's all we want to do. I mean, if we all helped each other, we would be the most powerful species. There'd be none of this worrying about an election. We'd be in it for us.
That's true. Absolutely.
All right, Juan, what are you most curious about?
I'm curious about the universe. I think how there's a hermetic expression, as above, so below. And I'm fascinated by that dichotomy of that there are mysteries in the greater universe, and there are mysteries in the micro universe, and there's something that flows through it all. And not to get too philosophical or too esoteric when it comes to that, I'm fascinated with understanding that there are vast distances in this universe that we can barely fathom, and that there are phenomena that people can spend their entire life trying to understand, and those phenomena inform the rest of our lives. Like I mentioned, I love Carl Sagan, and I love watching old footage of him, listening to all these astrophysicists and scientists explaining the greater universe and the mysteries of physics and what's possible, because in our minds, there are things that are impossible, and they're simply impossible because we are ignorant of how they're possible, if at all. And that's what I'm the most interested in. I'm fascinated to learn more about this great universe.
Hermetics is something I've been kind of looking into more recently.
Oh, nice.
Also. So yeah, the as above, so below is interesting to think about. There's also, I think there's like 7 principles or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's like 6 other ones that are pretty interesting to think about too.
Yes, absolutely. But that one in particular, I think it's the principle of duality or something like that.
Well, I always like to think, science always thinks it's right on everything, but it's usually wrong and needs to rework it. So I take any experiment, any knowledge, and I'll go, okay, like gunpowder. If the first person who discovers gunpowder, that other person next to him goes, yeah, but what about, and they describe a nuclear bomb, right? Well, yeah, that is possible and that is real. So when I talk about interdimensional space travel, well, what's the difference? So to me, how far is your imagination? Because everything's come from the imagination. It's all magic, an amalgamation of this earth turned into your iPhone, right? Somebody literally took their thoughts and through enough work, structured earth into making this device. So from that perspective, I go, if you can put it in your mind, anything's possible. And what I hate about society right now is that it's limited. It's why at the same time I'm fascinated with media and movies, and even within all of the control mechanisms, there's still that really stretched, pushed out far into the future. And I think that's one of the most important things that we don't have enough of.
Yeah.
We're
we
too
have
short-sighted.
that open-mindedness. We often classify, and I do it myself. We talk about media, for example, and we talk about social media, and we see it as this homogeneous evil, and it isn't. It can't be. All the individuals in that group cannot have ill will towards liberty or freedom of expression. And of course, there are problems that arise from all these different things, but not everybody who is in law enforcement can hate Black people. Like, that is just not the case. And throwing energy against the whole and saying this is all bad, it's counterproductive. And it's having that understanding, okay, there are a lot of people who are wrong about this. Let me listen to all these different opinions and glean what's the truth within all that, right? And talking about that whole vision of the future, you'll have some people that have a vision of the future that doesn't include me. You have people who have vision of the future that doesn't include people that look like me, that grew up where I grew up. And like, it's scary, right? Because things are possible for me to do, things are possible for them to do. So we all have to work together to tease out some of these evils and get rid of that evil from within that group. And with the same energy, find, oh, this group, look, here's this nugget of good information. How can we tease that out of that and promote it?
Exactly. You pick the weeds
You know?
and you fertilize.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. I love that. I can't add to that without ruining it.
I think we'll just move on to the next one then. Question 7. What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
This, I've read this one, and I struggle with it. I don't get embarrassed very often. This is, of all the questions that you've provided, this has to be the toughest one. The only, you see, it's trivial. Like, I think the only thing that comes to mind is me on one of the vivid memories I had in kindergarten, where, and I was talking to my kids about this recently. I was at Golden Skillet. I don't even know if you guys know what Golden Skillet is. It's some chicken restaurant. We had it in Puerto Rico, and I don't even know if it's a US chain or not. Golden Skillet. Anyway, I'm sitting there with my mom, and I was in kindergarten. Okay. This is one of those memories that's been with me for 35 years. And I noticed that a couple of tables across from us, there was a girl that I really liked from school. And her mom recognized us. And when they were done eating, they approached our table. And I said, I remember my mom saying, "Hey, make sure you say hello." You know? And I said, "Hey, how are you?" And the girl responded, "I'm good. How are you?" And I responded, "Good. How are you?" So I did a third "How are you?" And I was mortified. Right. And like I said, it's trivial, but it goes back to that conversation we were having at the beginning of social interaction and rejection and that kind of stuff. It's like, how do you deal with that? How do you recover from something like that? And it's funny to me that that's the only thing that I can remember.
But isn't it weird? Like, you're almost upset at yourself, not for the embarrassment, but because you were fighting yourself. Like, you couldn't engage in a normal conversation. Like, I did this to myself against my own will, and now I'm embarrassed about it. And I'm like, this is me. Like, that's what's weird about the embarrassment thing. And it's not like a guilt, but it's kind of like, man, like, how come I couldn't just say like something else?
That does happen in life a lot.
Yeah.
After you're done talking with someone, it's like, man, why did I say that?
But isn't that kind of good though? Because it teaches you that when you get into situations that you need to be prepared and think about what you say. This is like one of those lessons. It's like, it's way better to learn it this way, because then I guilt myself every time I think about this into going, no, like, I'm kind of glad the universe gave this to me when I was that age, because it's just a girl today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that partly. Yes, it is important for us to see it and recognize the thing, but I try to adopt a more stoic mentality where this is something that passed and I can't continue to beat myself up about it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's not what I mean. I mean, yeah.
No, but there's the limit. It's like, what you're suggesting is the beginning of it, and stopping yourself from beating yourself up.
Well, you said it before, right?
The
Something
bookend.
is fuel. So to me, it's
Yeah.
not beating myself up. It's I felt bad. And when I think about
Yeah.
it, I don't ever want to feel that way again. So instead of reliving it, this is how my mind worked. I go, all right, well, because I don't ever want to feel that way again, I'm doing the opposite to avoid that feeling. And so it's like a cutoff, like I can't feel that now because that ain't true. But, and so that's it's like I use that as the fuel. So instead of getting angry, it becomes like, I love it because it makes me a better person.
Yeah.
When I acknowledge my selfishness in not wanting to feel bad and realize that's not something to be guilty about. That means that like you were upset that you weren't doing the right things before.
Yeah.
And this is like
how
a
you
natural
protect
self-correcting. Exactly.
Yeah, you're protecting yourself. And that's helpful. That's helpful. And what I would caution the people listening is that it's a gradient. You have that balance. I'll completely ignore the lesson, or I'll remember the lesson forever. And there's that gradient. If you get too far into beating yourself up about it, is detrimental. If you completely ignore the lesson, is detrimental. It's having that balance. Like, where in this gradient of importance do I keep that? So that I'm not, so I'm not beating myself about it, and I'm not ignoring the lesson. It's a difficult balance to strike.
Yeah, I love that you're using balance and gradients, because if you just tie it back to hermetics, everything kind of exists on this spectrum or the gradient, like you said, and it's tricky to not be on one end or the other. You have to find that balance and kind of ride that middle line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because if you're too far on one end or the other, it's probably not healthy.
Yeah, that's the story of life on its entirety. How do you achieve balance and not compromise everything at the expense of the one thing?
Yeah. All right. Question 8. What is your greatest fear and how did you overcome it?
My greatest fear is dying with too many blank canvases on me. That is, and it's funny, it's not what I wrote down. I struggle with that question too, but now I have a little bit more clarity, and I'm 42 years old, and you're just looking at the average lifespan of a male. I feel like my gas tank is at half full, and I want to make sure that I'm living the life that takes that variable of health that I'm responsible for and is not neglected. I want to eat better, exercise a little bit more, be present, not achieve, but embark on the things that I want to do. But I have to be 100% clear with myself. My biggest fear is that I'll leave with too many blank canvases. I saw that in my mother, and the closer I get to the age that she departed, the more difficult that component becomes. So I can't claim that I've overcome that fear. I'm working through it. I'm working through understanding that it's irrational for me to expect to die at the same age that my mother did. I have to remind myself that it was somewhat of a random act of nature and biology, that it's irrational for me to feel that I'm reaching the finish line. I could be 100 years. I could live 100 years for all I know. So whenever I reach moments that becomes a clear and present fear, I have to work my thought process through it and say, hey, you're being irrational about it. You're being, you're not thinking clear through this. You're okay. There's nothing in the present vicinity that indicates that the same happens for you. So,
Right. So it almost becomes just the only variable is time, when. So,
Mhm.
then it's how efficient do I need to be?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's tough. That's a tough thing to strike, because I waste time with some things, and I take time away from some of the important things in life. And it's that constant search for balance that gets me back to, oh, no, be present. The important thing right now is to put that phone down and listen to this kid and answer his question. The important thing right now is to recognize the preoccupation on your friend and ask him questions to help him deal through it, as opposed to ignoring it. So achievement it's a very subjective thing. um, I used to think about achieving in a certain way. Now I feel I've achieved a lot. If I were to leave with all the empty canvases, I know that I've left a legacy for my children. I feel that I've left an indelible impression in them for them to go through life. But it's just that mortality is an interesting subject for me. It's an ever present one, not necessarily a depressing one, but it sure is a stimulating and um, encouraging one.
For sure. Something I think about often too. But I like the way your analogy has to do with canvas, leaving canvases blank. Something that Darren Grimes over at Grimerica I've heard say, or in the chats, I can't remember, it was on the podcast or chat room, but he's always he says, be afraid to leave life when life. How does he put it? Don't be more afraid to leave things unfinished than being afraid to step out of your comfort zone. So like moving on to the next phase with unfinished projects. And I just like the fact that you bring arts into it, because arts canvases, it really is puts a little bit different spin on it, like because life is art. Art imitates life, life imitates art. So uh, having these accomplishments and projects and legacies that we want to leave behind, if we think of it more as a piece of art, I think that makes it so much more beautiful.
Art
I
is
love
so
that.
important, man. Like a certain piece of art can give you a feeling, like an understanding, an emotional, like there's no way to put that into words. It is a
Mhm.
language. And we've lost a lot. I mean, we have it in our culture, but the focus is more, marketing driven than in personal impactfulness. So it's why, yeah, I love perusing through like old 18th century art, and just some of it moves me in a way that, oh man, I'm like, I wish that we lived in a society where people with these skills were given the birth to create this greatness again. Not be burdened with the 9 to 5 and having to
Mhm.
supply their stuff, being seen as, like art is magical.
It is. I just finished reading a biography of Leonardo da Vinci. I wish I remember the author. Um, Again, I love reading biographies because it gives you an insight. People have just a general idea of who people are and what they do and what they achieved. But a biography, like a full biography like this one, opens up a window into Walter Isaacson is the author. So it just opens a window into another individual's struggle, their success, their toil, and it just makes life real for you. We have these, you know, ideal images of individuals that are so flawed. They're so far from reality. The, My Life and Work by Henry Ford is is a great example. If you haven't read My Life and Work, it's an autobiography. it just really shows you who the man was. There's a chapter there on it, against the Jews that is very eye-opening. It's I knew that he had some anti-Semitic beliefs, but that chapter was, it really shook me. The book was awesome all, from the very beginning. I'm like, oh my God, I'm loving it, loving it, loving it. And then I hit that chapter. I was like, what did he say? Wait, what? Did he really say that? But it just shows you, like, this is a deeply flawed individual in that regards.
Mhm.
But he was brilliant in these other things.
Isn't it great though? Because it shows us how far we're coming. Because you look
Yes,
at today,
absolutely.
I mean, just look back, 20, 30 years ago, there's women still being beaten on film without them knowing the scene's going to be shot, like, horrific things. And, now
Yeah.
we're coming to the time where we see these things as really horrible. But, if
Yeah.
you go back through that cultural lens, it's one of the reasons why I love watching movies from like the 20s and 1910s when, it's like, oh my God, they're beating a dog. They're kicking the dog on camera. Well, man, that lets me understand that as bad as I think things are, man, we're doing good. Like, we're really doing all right.
We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. We're not there yet, but we're moving in the right direction.
Well, you can't be, right? If you the only way to be really good at anything, including making the right decisions, is having made some bad decisions.
And not being defined by them.
Exactly.
That's
So
a-
don't
that's a truth.
don't post to your Twitter profile, because that's going to be around forever.
The truth.
Right. Question number 9. What quality do you most admire in a man? Why?
Hunger for knowledge. That's the quality that I admire the most in a man and in a woman and a child, in anything. Hunger for knowledge. With equal force, I despise boredom. I have very little sympathy when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm so bored." It almost angers me to hear it. This universe is just so infinite, and there's so much to be wondrous about, that it's almost, I can't say criminal, but it's reprehensible for one to not want to know more about it. So hunger for knowledge is what really moves me.
We're built against it. Every child's learned about space in class, but how many children have been there with a teacher looking up at the stars?
Oof.
I mean,
Damn, that's a really good question. That's
so like
that's so
there's
powerful.
yeah, we've wiped out the sky with our light, and we're just not giving people the tools to do simple things like look up.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in this world, but the knowledge of it is learned in a building.
That's so beautiful. That's so interesting. And I want to share something real quick with you about exactly that. I have a 10-year-old, and he loves video games like any 10-year-old, and he is interested in all these things that 10-year-olds are interested in. And I know that he's interested in the universe and the stars and the planets and all of that. And if I were to just tell them, "Hey, listen, I got to tell you something I just discovered. We just found that there's actually water on the moon in areas where the sun has been hitting. Like, how is that possible?" He would be like, "Oh, that's great." But the other night, we were in the pool, and it started getting dark, and we just out there talking and everything, and our light was like a sensor light, and it turned off completely. So the sky completely opened up to us, right? And he said, "Oh my God," when he looked up. And I felt it, like, this is the moment. I felt that this is the moment where this kid noticed that there's a sky out there, right? And And I start asking him questions, and he starts asking me questions, and we're talking, and all of a sudden we're looking in the one direction, and we see a meteor. We see the most distinct and prolonged meteor I've seen in a long time. And we were both looking at it. You know how there's a meteor shower and you're out there with a kink in your neck because you're trying to see them and you're trying to acclimate your eye to the darkness, and one happens in your peripheral vision and you just missed it, and there's right. This was that complete focus moment. We're both looking in the same direction, and there it was, beginning to end. It marked that kid. It marked me. And we need more of those experiences where we're saying, no distractions. Look, let's just enjoy this. You can't force it. As much as you want it, you can't force that. But if you make all the conditions favorable for it to happen, then you're better off. So set a reminder at 8:00. We turn off all the digital devices. This is the time for us to talk. I wish we would sit down and have dinner and just chat, and we're not consistent at that, but we want it.
That's great. You just interface with nature, and nature becomes the ultimate teacher, the ultimate inspiration. It's it's a beautiful thing when I start to break the entire world down. That's what I'm loving about this conversation. It brass tacks it down to these are the rules of the universe.
Yeah.
Hey man, open your eyes and look up. You'll be inspired.
Yeah, it's all there.
And you won't be bored if you look up either. Talk about, like you said, Adam, inspiring, like awe and wonder. Like, I don't know. I remember the first time I saw the rings of Saturn through a telescope. Like, that was mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like, how can you be bored after that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's fascinating. I love how Neil deGrasse Tyson, he closes his podcast and stuff. He says, keep looking up.
Yes.
And I don't think he means keep looking at the sky. Keep looking up in all its possible meaning. Keep looking up. Put your chin up, boy.
That's great.
Keep looking up. Right? There's better things out there that you're not paying attention. Keep looking up. We got teachers, man. We got plenty of teachers. We just got to listen.
Exactly. All right. Question number 10. Who were/are your role models and why?
I wrote a few. I have, my father is a role model in the terms of not being afraid of going for things he wanted. He showed his love in his own way. I admire him for that hardworking and loving component. I wrote a contemporary in Elon Musk. I love the way he thinks. His concept of looking at things from a first principle point of view opens doors, opens opportunities. He's a visionary that is able to put together a team. I don't know if you're noticing a theme here. Putting together a theme. By the way, if someone's listening to this and you feel like, oh, you know what? I identify with your mission of helping men become gentlemen, and hit me up if you want to be a part of this. You've heard how important building a team now is. But he's able to execute on things that were impossible. I remembered, and I'm sure you identify with this, Adam, that living in Florida, having so close proximity to the Space Coast, we are so fortunate. I see rocket ships go up to space from my front yard.
Yeah, you're really close. Yeah, I try to catch all of them. I get washed out. I live very near Palm Beach International Airport, Trump. Especially right now, I'm very blessed with getting a lot of military aircraft. Over the last week, I've had Blackhawks and F-16s with their afterburners going over, and it's so much fun. Like,
Nice.
so yeah,
I love that.
I'm in wonder of the flight technology that we have down here that just you can't get away from it.
Yeah, I remember the day that SpaceX landed its first stage. The
Yeah,
very
was that
first
the
launch.
night one, or was that one of the? No, that was
Yeah,
that was because I watched that one, and that was so stinking cool to
yeah,
see that flame shooting down. Like it was a completely different launch than I'd ever seen before.
yep. Ah, man, I just loved it. I even forgot what the question was. Oh yeah, the role models. And I wrote another one. I wrote Benjamin Franklin,
Ooh.
and and I wrote The Diplomat. Benjamin Franklin was a catalyst for change. And I want to emphasize again, someone's listening to this that needs to listen to this. Benjamin Franklin was a flawed individual. I am a flawed individual. Bill is a flawed individual. Adam is a flawed individual. And we shine through the aspects of our life that we can exert the most influence in the world. And Benjamin Franklin had his flaws, but Benjamin Franklin made stuff happen. He was able to build bridges. He was able to connect with people in a very meaningful kind of way. That's another biography that I read, Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. If you haven't read that one's worth
Well,
reading.
he's an amazing example of that because despite all of his flaws, it's hard to argue that, you know, the world has not been given. I mean, there's some of his phrases and quips
Yeah,
are so poignant, and like the amount of things that
timeless.
he was, involved in producing and inventing. And you look at that and you go, from our world today, in spite of all those other things, he made it a better place. And if you
Mm,
think about this, this is one thing that Joe Rogan says all the time that sticks in me. It's that, why do you want to hold somebody to their past behaviors and beliefs? Because if you're only held to you being a shithead, I don't want to think you're only going to be a shithead forever. I want to think you're going to be a better person. It's like everything
yeah,
else. If you do it a little better each day, you can become the thing you don't want to be.
yeah. I mean, we are a work in progress till we die.
Yeah. He's a
To
wonderful example of that. In spite of anything you could read, look at
Yeah,
what it's done. And the good outweighs, his baggage.
yeah. It's funny because like I'm sure you've seen the dynamic. We have a platform in which we speak to, it's a one to many kind of
Yeah.
platform, right? And we reach a lot of people that like what we talk about. They like to have these inquisitive conversations. And there's always interaction in the social media, in the YouTube videos, and all that kind of stuff. Inevitably, I share a quote by someone and someone picks out, oh, but he's a douchebag because of this, that he's an a-hole because of that or the other. I'm like that's what you latched on. And you realize you completely ignored and completely looked beyond the truthful quote that I shared with you, that you can't
Mhm.
deny it, that you can't discredit it.
They added
Yeah,
context.
yeah. Yeah, here, oh, but he said it. I'm like, doesn't matter. Like, did you read what it says? Do you agree with it? Like, why such an obsession with the these other
Yeah.
aspects that, I understand I'm not going to go around quoting Hitler, but it,
My dad really drilled something into me. He used to say, a broken clock is right twice a day.
yeah,
And that one stuck with me because if you look at, there's certain information that's just good information. And I look at everybody and everything in the same way. I'm sure if I went through the writings of Hitler, I'm going to find something in there that go, hey, you know what? Yeah, that does make sense.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean I support the beliefs. It just means that I'm willing
correct.
to look at the entire world and find what works and what doesn't and what aligns with my beliefs and my morals and take it in.
Yeah.
And, just like you said, I considered there's nothing perfect, right? Like all the pools are tainted. So, pick carefully. It's like choose your books wisely. Don't necessarily throw out the book. You don't
Exactly.
have to believe every chapter.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great lesson to take from this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like Adam, what you said, that broken clock is right twice a day. Like you can take a good quote from, I don't know, I want to say a bad source, but like, everybody has got something worthwhile to say. And just because one area of their life wasn't ideal doesn't mean that you can completely discredit a gem of knowledge that you can find, like a diamond in the rough or whatever,
Well, right. There's universal truths. Doesn't matter, what individual atoms, reverberated the proper words that determines whether it's factual or not. It is. We're just here to interpret.
There's a quote that I came across it today, and I think it's very appropriate for this moment. It says, "In my walks, every man I meet is my superior in some way, and in that I learn from him." That's Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I love the emphasis there. In my walks, every man I meet is my superior in some way, and in that I learn from him. So, despite the other stuff, in that I learn from him. It sounded like a preaching, didn't it? It sounded like a sermon.
Oh, no, that's why teams are so good, right? You're taking the best of each other and amplifying it and noticing the negatives and quelling it down. And you see stuff better in other people than you do yourself. It's probably the reason we're continually getting better and we don't realize it.
Yeah. Dwell on those things.
Agreed. All right. Question number 11. What institution of society or structural aspect of modern life would you change given the chance?
Ah, interesting. What institution of society or structural aspect of modern life would change? Yeah, education. Education would be one that I would put a lot of effort into modifying. I have people that I love that gave their life to education, and I could sense the restrictions that they were facing because of, especially like here in Florida, we have standardized testing and we have
Thank you,
all
Jeb Bush.
yep. Uh, Standardized testing and like such an emphasis on aspects that are important, but they completely detract from developing a well-rounded individual. I think that we're missing. I'm living through an example right now. Our kids are doing virtual school, and I tutor them on the side to help bridge the gap in what they're learning. And the emphasis is just science, English, writing, and math. And there's at least one day where social studies is 1 minute.
What?
I'm not kidding you. It's 1 minute of their schedule. It almost looks like it's a loophole. Oh, we have to do social studies, but there's no.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Read a headline of like a tweet?
You can't do anything in 1 minute. So I've taken it upon myself. I have a whiteboard here in my studio, and any topic that they talk about in social studies, I elaborate upon it. My kid and I, if I look right now at my whiteboard, we're talking about legislation, the legislative branch. We're talking about civility. We're talking about the structure of society, representative democracy. And my kids are understanding that kind of stuff. Of course, 1 minute is not enough, but it's a crucial part of our society. How are we going to tend to the lives of these kids for 12 years and then send them out to the world and they can't formulate a budget? They can't establish a forecast for their business. They can't properly file their taxes. They don't know how to civilly engage in a conversation with other people. How is this acceptable? Now, I understand, just like I said, I tutor my kids on the side based on the deficiencies that they're meeting in school. We have a responsibility to do that. We are not, school is not the end all be all for the education of our children. But I think that not having a substantial arts program, music program, it's detrimental to our society as a whole. So a structure of society that I would spend some time, I would really put emphasis in looking at alternate educational systems, looking at other countries and how they're, and seeing what I could get of benefit in order to build a more well-rounded educational system.
Do you feel you're part of that in the podcasting realm?
Yes, to a degree. I feel that I do have to touch on some topics that should have been discussed in school. And don't get me wrong, like social studies, for example. I remember going through a extensive social studies and talking about the colonies of the US and talking about Puerto Rican history, but how much of that is retained? It's very little. So there has to be a different approach where it's not just like, okay, let's go through this, let's go through this, let's go through that, and here we go. Paying attention, okay, what is it that you need? And in a sense, that's how I work with the podcast. I try to ask my audience, what is it that you're struggling with right now? And I recently did a very extensive study. I'm in the process of developing a course to help men in their development to be a gentleman in the 21st century. And I interviewed a number of prospective students because I wanted to know, what are you struggling with? But just because I'm not struggling with it, it doesn't mean that it's not a struggle for other people. And I need to understand what it is. And one thing that surprised me, legacy was a huge thing.
Really?
The majority of these men that I spoke with, they were all worried about not being remembered, about not contributing to their families enough. And to me, that wasn't a preoccupation. I have things that I feel very satisfied with. And so leaving a legacy wasn't a big of a preoccupation, but the majority of these men, they needed help with it.
Kind of goes back to, I think, want to say William Thoreau quote that most men die in quiet desperation. That in these times, especially with lockdown and everything, that I never thought of that. Like, I've always known it's there, but I never thought of that kind of, there's got to be a tidal wave.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Especially now. If you look at the Great Depression, and this is, whenever this pandemic hit, I dug in to what the 1918 pandemic was, the Great Depression and all that, because I could see some similarities with what was happening. And one of the things that I came across that specifically impacted men during the Great Depression was shame. These men felt ashamed that they weren't able to provide for their families. And in some of the conversations that I saw people having with historians about it, asking like, what would you have done to help these men? And the answer unequivocally was to help them realize that they were not alone. In two senses, they were not alone because there were other people that were struggling with the same thing. There were thousands upon thousands of men who no longer were able to provide for their family, but that also that they weren't alone, that they didn't have to deal with it just by themselves, that they could have asked for help. And that's important to me, for men to understand that there shouldn't be a stigma behind asking for help. There shouldn't be a negative stigma behind expressing your emotions. There should not be a negative stigma behind being vulnerable in your conversation with other men. And we think about the masculine man of the 1920s, and it would have been inconceivable for them to recognize some of these things, thereby putting undue stress on the shoulders, undue anxiety in their minds, and making them even less efficient because they couldn't deal with their emotions or with their problems collectively.
That's beautiful, man. I mean, I don't want to say that that's what we're here to do, but connecting people. I mean, that it's such an important thing because you may be alone in your world and you might not have the person to reach out for or know where to go. But that doesn't mean that there's not a community that you can ask for help, that you can.
Exactly.
I mean, what's the worst that happens, right? Nothing changes.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. The best that happens, you make a connection you didn't have before. And, people don't realize it. It's kind of like, I want to bring this to a Hollywood level, but in Hollywood, it's not what you can do. It's who you know. You got to be able to do the work, but it's more important to know the right people. And, I don't know where I was going with that, but it really helps just to be connected with the people that can really that help you. You got to be able to find the right group. And, on social media, the algos are not your friends. They're not trying to make you have a stress-free day. They're trying to amp you up so you click more. I lost my train of thought, but
no, but I could see you losing it, but I got it for you. It was that connection of the men, that unity of individuals. It's like we're an organism.
Yes.
And to act as if we are in isolation is counterproductive to the collective potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, granted, there's, in capitalism, yes, you have competition and you have all these different influences, but as an organism, if you think about humans as a collective, that coming together is what makes change. Any significant change in the world, any lasting and significant change in the world comes from people coming together.
Absolutely. And not shutting down conversation. Because look, if I'm operating in a way that's negative on the world and you can show me, through your frame of view that, yeah, really, it's in my benefit and everyone's benefit to look at it from your point of view, then man, let's have that conversation. Let's really do it because that's where we have to get to.
We need that. We need that 100%.
Speaking of having conversations, and Juan brought up legacy, I think that's one of the issues that 13 Questions is trying to help address is what are we leaving behind for the younger generations, a legacy. And I think if listeners were to take the open source aspect of this project and take these questions and go ask their father or their grandfather or a role model or somebody that they think is a model citizen, and record it, send it to us, we can set it out as an episode, and that way that's something that you've left behind, that you helped orchestrate, and it's imprinted in the digital space of podcasting. So
I love that.
So yeah, I'm encouraged. We always encourage our listeners to have their conversations and send them to us. And Juan, if you want to do one of these, you're more than welcome to, and send it to us. We can share it on our channels or whatnot. But yeah, just getting that involvement and legacy.
Oh yeah, dude, and improve it. Right? Ask different questions if you have some ideas or thoughts. This is not locked in stone. We're not beholden to it. I consider it to be its own entity, and I want it to evolve as it needs. So if you go, man, maybe you could ask the question in this way, or here's a really good question, send it our way. I need to open up a channel in the Discord for that as well, Bill.
Yeah, we have a channel called Content Suggestions, I think. If anybody wants to post it in there, you're more than welcome to. We're more than open to any suggestions. Any feedback is great, guys. Join the Discord. All right. Question 12. What is the most courageous thing you have ever done in your life? or seen?
The one that sticks out was moving to the States by myself. I recognized that the prospects of opportunities for me in Puerto Rico in the arts world were very limited. I took it upon myself to see, okay, where as a lumberjack, where are the trees? And I said goodbye to my family, and I moved to Florida. And I've been here ever since. As a matter of fact, this week I unearthed some VHS tapes of my old movies. As I documented me leaving my house
Wow.
on August the 23rd of 1999, I was able to digitize those. So I've been going this whole week. I've been going through all those memories and saying goodbye to my mother at the airport. And
How old were you at the time that you did that?
I was 20.
That's a big move.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, you can't even go buy a beer when you land. I mean,
But when I took off, I could.
yeah.
Drinking age in Puerto Rico is 18. But yeah, and at the time I felt as an adult, which is the funniest thing of looking at old videos. And as I looked at myself in these videos, I'm like, I was a baby. I was a little kid just going out and trying to figure out how to live. When I first moved into this house, I've been living in the same house. I moved for an internship for Disney. So I came with a job already, but it was an internship. So it was part of what they call the living, learning, and earning experience. And I was coming over for about 4 to 5 months working for Disney. And I told my dad, I said, I remember where I was when I told him. I said, listen, I'm going over there for this internship, but this is a scouting mission. I'm going to see if this is something that I want to, if there are more opportunities for me over there. And I remember he was in shock when he heard me say that. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I think that's the best alternative for me. And he said, well, if that's what you think, just let me know. And I know he thought about it when I left, and he toiled through it. And I remember calling him and letting him know, listen, I've looked around, and I think this is the right move for me. So you can imagine how, I was very close to my parents, so it was difficult for them, but it was scary. It was a scary move.
But that's some high level thinking, because you're not even going into it like, no, I'm taking this opportunity. No, I'm going to look around. I'm going to look at all the opportunity. I'm 20. That's some really you've had some good input to be able to come to that conclusion. I was nowhere near that in my 20s.
Thank you. But just think about what we started this conversation with. Nothing has been written of cowards. And they instilled that mentality in me. And this was something that, yes, there will be fear, because courage is not the answer, is not the absence of fear. It's the determination to work through fear.
Yes. So, I mean, I keep going back to fighting, but it's one of the most interesting aspects of the world when you realize that these guys are scared before they go in. Most guys, they have butterflies. They don't want to go in. Guys are having panic attacks and cry. And then you go, but that's the greatest guy. Yeah. Fear's normal. That's a fuel. Like, use it.
There's a documentary called Restrepo. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Mm-mm.
It's eye-opening when it comes to real life war footage, and it's an outpost out in the mountains of Afghanistan, if I'm not mistaken. in the early 2000s, I think. And they're documenting, they're going into this outpost surrounded by Afghan mountains, being shot at by the Taliban and all these militias. And the the reason I bring it up is because they had this one soldier who was Rambo. Like, this dude was built like a tank, and this man was knowledgeable in battle. And I hate to do this, spoiler alert, cover your ears for the next 30 seconds if you want to watch it. But they go out in one of their first missions and they kill their dude. Like, they see their guy just plummet to his death, and this was their strongest. Now, if you think fear, being in the middle of a gunfight in the mountains of Afghanistan and seeing the strongest man in your unit fall to his death, that's fear. But these men prevailed. These men took that as fuel to go out and do their job, and they honored him and they remembered him.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right?
This is team, right?
Yeah.
Even like he was so much part of, like, there's power in that. Like, it's the idea of the martyr. It's not really the martyr. It's just, even in their death, they were so valuable and important that their gumption, the things they stood for, those shine, and they shine brighter.
Yeah. They're leading the charge in the
right.
darkness.
Well, yeah, because when that person leaves, right? Well, who's gonna pick that up, right? Kind of like, the character gets killed in the game, you got to pick up the loot, right? Well, who's gonna pick up the battle? Who's gonna take up that energy and that thing he had that you didn't? It's there for, I don't know. It's philosophical, but to me, it's in those situations when that's when you have to become that.
Yeah, using fear as a fuel for action, I think is a constructive way to do that. Whether it's, I don't know, Juan, you leaving Puerto Rico at the age of 20, like I went into seminary around the same age when I was 20, and then and we're talking about the heat of battle and being afraid that way and harnessing that energy. I mean, because it is energy. I mean, you can either run from it or embrace it and put it towards something constructive. And I think that it's more, it's better to do that than the opposite.
Yeah, I know when that energy comes on me, I don't ignore the fear, but I don't let it overpower me. I acknowledge it, and I go, okay, well, if I let that come in too much, then it affects my judgment and it's negative. So I always just keep it there, acknowledge it, and I don't let it come in. And I have so much power in that, because when you're in those scary real world life situations where there's another person or situation that you can't control and you may be in danger or need to put yourself in danger for someone else, it's very comforting knowing you can leave that baggage, know it's there, and you're going to get back to it. So I don't know how people can do that, but that's been one of the most powerful things for me personally, to be able to just learn to acknowledge and go on.
That's super powerful to have.
Absolutely. All right. This is question 13. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
In the Gentleman's Brotherhood, our motto is a better man today. And I firmly believe that it is important for us to have that mentality that we want to be better today than we were yesterday. My shirt that I'm wearing right now, it says, a better man today than I was yesterday. And you are the measure of that progress. Granted, culture and biology and history, they're all going to try to sway you in one way or another. But to be an upright man in today's world, one needs to be open to learning, one needs to be desirous of improvement. One needs to meet courage with courtesy. Those are the two operating words in our in my company and my way of living. It's courage and courtesy. You need to live life with the courage to face difficulties, the courage to confront difficult situations, the courage to have the difficult conversations with people, but not at the expense of showing dignity and showing compassion and showing kindness. I can tell you what I feel about you. I can tell you what I don't like about your approach, but I don't have to sacrifice our relationship in the process. I can do so with the most tactful approach. I can do it with the friendliest of tones, and it doesn't make me less of a man. So for me, being a man in the 21st century is to is to embrace the fact that you didn't choose your life. You're here, and you can make of it whatever you want, but you're not alone. You have to do so in harmony with the people that surround you. So live life with courage and courtesy.
I love it,
That's-
man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the with courtesy, like civility aspect, is something that's worth emphasizing because so we talk about courage, that's strength, that's one of the cardinal virtues. But doing that, and I think part of that is the civility or the courtesy aspect, because it having a conversation with somebody that you don't see eye to eye with, and being able to come out of that conversation still in a respectful way to conduct yourself accordingly, and know that you've done something productive instead of offending who the thing with offensive, I don't know, in my mind you choose to be offended, so
Correct.
that's a different topic. But yeah, just courtesy, civility, and having the courage and strength to do that, and the capability to do that, is something that I don't really see too much of going on right now when it comes to people that disagree on certain topics or whatnot. It's either my way or the highway, where
Yeah.
if you have courage and strength and civility, you can still acknowledge those differences, but like I said, walk away from it with a positive experience, and
Yeah.
hopefully benefit both parties involved.
Yeah, it's an undestructive approach to relationships. And I try to tell my kids this all the time. Hey, don't be afraid to speak your mind, but don't derive pleasure just in the fact that you're speaking your mind and you're saying what you think. Like, I see a lot of people, it's like, no, I call it like it is. I hate that expression. Oh, they're so proud to call it like it is. Yeah. And call it like it is in a tactful way, not like a freaking caveman. Have some dignity. You have some respect for yourself. See, there's no pride in insulting another individual that has a dissenting opinion than you. I don't look at you with more respect. Let them know the erring of their ways in an eloquent, well-formed manner, and you'll go way further than you can imagine. But tarnish old relationships in your quest to speak your mind and call it like it is, you end up with no friends, no allies, no partners, no supporters. I don't find it to be a worthy way to go through life. We are all part of the human race,
Mm-hmm.
all with different colors, different opinions, different life experiences that inform our mind. We need to respect that diversity.
Well,
It
we're
just
very
makes
simple,
us
right?
stronger.
If you throw
Yeah.
that verbal attack, it's like throwing a punch. I'm always going to be defensive and on my guard and never trusting of you.
That's
So
right.
why that's a terrible way to try to win any argument or, quarrel, to me, here's the information. That's going to be the fight. Here it is. Look at it. Here's my view. If you like it, you like it, right? I'm not here to make you. I want you to want it.
Yeah, that's true. That's powerful.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that it's also courageous to forgive somebody too.
Mhm.
Forgiveness. I mean, because it's so much easier. I don't know. In my mind, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, if you're holding like a grudge against somebody, you feel justified in your position. But in order to step out of that and forgive them and recognize that your feelings maybe weren't aligned in the correct way, that takes a lot of courage and strength too. So
I
I
agree
just think
with you.
that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, that's how I see it. It does take a lot of fortitude. It is easier and it feels more organic to want to impede the progress of someone who's wronged you.
Well,
It just feels like
a good viewpoint to flip it on is going, they're not going to control me. All right. So if I'm locked into this and I'm holding and I'm thinking about this, man, you're stuck in my mind. You're winning. You're
Mhm.
winning. And once I bring that acknowledgement to my mind, I can just, in the same emotion, push it out and forgive and let go. So it's kind of that refocusing of the energy. The intent is all the same, but I've managed to trick my mind into being able to pull the trigger.
yeah.
Right on. So that was the 13 questions. If you guys want to take a 5-minute break, or we can just continue rolling right into the bonus questions.
Well, actually, I know that Juan here's got family coming over. So I think we're going to take an addendum. And obviously, I don't want to speak for you, but I can definitely see us working and going, forward on projects or our groups meeting.
Absolutely.
It's almost like parallel thinking.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to invent the airplanes over here. You're in France, I'm in America, and we're still in that early building stages. I'm not looking to win anything, but I kind of see it as just this, it's very comforting to see that there's somebody out there organically who's seen this same problem in society and wanted to create an information node and a place for people to gather to overcome it, man. It's that team.
Yeah.
We are a team. Humanity is a team. It once was
Yep.
a village. Now we're a globe, and we got to figure out how to reconnect on that personal level. And I'm glad to be here with you, dude. So
Thank you.
I'm sure
It's
we'll
my pleasure to be here.
We'll get to those questions later or something else.
Oh, you can count on it. I'll be happy to connect again and do something extra special for your supporters for sure.
Sweet. Hey, and support is literally just going to the Discord feed. If anybody wants the free link to the full episodes, I'll give that to you too. Just email me. We're not hiding anything. We're just trying to promote the growth of the community, which has been really, really great. So head on over there, check us out. And yeah. Oh, Juan, is there any places that you want people to go and find more information about you? Obviously, it'll be in the show notes, but you have the opportunity to let everybody know.
Thank you. The main hub will be thegentleman'sbrotherhood.com. So if they go to thegentleman'sbrotherhood.com, they can see the different episodes that I have for my podcast, my YouTube channel. I've been publishing an episode in October pretty much every week. And, if you head over to YouTube, also you can find the information there. But most importantly, say hello. Make sure that regardless of where you connect, leave a comment, leave a question. I'll be happy to connect with you because this is a brotherhood. I think we're all working on this together to help men become better in their ways.
Oh, dude, this is great, right? You're not saying I have the answers. It's
For sure.
saying, help me help you. You
Yeah.
have knowledge. I have knowledge. Let's meet together and make us greater. Man,
Absolutely.
that's so powerful as human beings. If we could all just do that, truth and virtue and so many other things would come out of that bond.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adam, Bill. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the opportunity. Love the conversation.
Same
I
here,
look
my
forward
friend.
to having you guys over on the Gentleman's Brotherhood.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be in touch for sure.
All right, Juan, you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism. Why? Why is there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. That night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.